Look, the Phillies announced a boatload of roster moves ahead of tonight's non-tender deadline, including 7 players that were tendered new contracts, 2 players that have already agreed, and 2 players that will not be Phillies in 2026. I'm going to get into all of that right now because this is important stuff for understanding where this roster is headed. If this is your first time here, thank you for joining us. This is your one-stop shop for all things Phillies. Friday, the 21st of November, was the non-tender deadline, or the deadline to tender contracts to players that are arbitration eligible. Arbitration can get a little tricky for some people. Basically, once you hit a certain amount of years in service time, you become arbitration eligible. You can go back and forth with the team. If you do not agree on a number, you go to arbitration. You get a certain amount of years of arbitration. If anybody wants me to make a video just about arbitration, breaking it down, I think it would be pretty helpful because it is a little bit confusing for some people. But once you get the hang of it, it's really not as difficult as you think. But why we're here today, the Phillies made a boatload of moves. Announcing roster moves just moments ago, the Phillies have agreed to terms on contracts for the 2026 season with Rafael Marchand and Garrett Stubbs. The Phillies have tendered contracts to 7 arbitration-eligible players: Alec Bohm, Edmundo Sosa, Bryson Stott, Brandon Marsh, John Duran, Tanner Banks, and Jesus Luzardo. And the club did not tender contracts to right-handers Michael Mercado and Junior Marte. Neither of them were arbitration eligible. It seems like the Phillies were just sort of using this deadline to get them off of the 40-man roster. So now the Phillies' 40-man roster sits at 32 players. Another update on the Stubbs thing. We did not hear the official number for Rafael Marchand yet, but from Matt Gelb earlier, he reported that Garrett Stubbs will once again have a split contract like he did this past season. He'll make $925,000 in the majors and $575,000 in the minors. He is out of minor league options, but the Phillies chose to retain some catching depth. So once again, both Rafael Marchand and Garrett Stubbs will return. As of right now, the 7 players that I listed in the tendered contracts category will be returning as well. Obviously, trades can still happen. Alec Bohm can still get traded. A big potential trade piece this offseason for the Phillies. If the Phillies look to shop Brandon Marsh, there was a report a few weeks ago about the Phillies looking to maybe trade one of their left-handed relievers. Maybe Tanner Banks fits into that category. Granted, from some people I've sort of talked to, it seems like Matt Strahm is more of the possibility there than Alvarado or Banks. But that is really the big news of today. And I think the biggest one for me is probably Alec Bohm. Bohm, a confusing baseball player. I think confusing may be the right word. A player that shows at times that he can really hit the baseball and he's really improved over at third base, and other times just not great. My biggest issue with the Bohm thing over the years is that I think they're doing him a disservice by putting him at the cleanup spot. They've done it a lot because they've been forced to. The Phillies haven't had a true cleanup hitter in years. Schwarber could have been that guy, but ideally Schwarber is not the 4th guy up in your lineup. There's no reason to hit Bohm before Schwarber and that sort of thing. But Alec Bohm is a guy that could potentially be shopped this offseason for the Phillies, and I believe the Phillies will probably not be actively looking and ready to trade him, but definitely have open ears like they were last offseason. This past season for Alec Bohm, 409 slugging percentage with a 102 OPS plus. That OPS plus is basically league average. League average is 100. That is the standard flat average OPS plus. He hit 11 home runs and 464 at-bats, not necessarily what you want from a 65 third baseman. You wish to see that number up in the 20s, the RBIs up in the 80s. Home runs 11, 59 RBIs, just a 331 on-base percentage, and just 29 walks. Yes, he had 133 hits and only struck out 82 times, but it wasn't a great season for Alec Bohm, who once again could potentially be a name on the trade market this offseason. Another reason why people maybe thought Bohm was potentially going to get non-tendered was because of the amount of money the Phillies are going to owe him. Basically, according to MLB trade rumors, it's going to be around $10.5 million in arbitration. Granted, Bohm could ask for more, and if they don't agree, then they'll go to an arbitration hearing. But it's going to be in that $10 million range. Do the Phillies want to pay Alec Bohm $10 million next year? I guess they're willing to take that chance. Yes, like I said, even though players are tendered contracts, all trades are still on the table. I did want to just get into one more thing that went down today. Pedro Leon was claimed off waivers by the Phillies from the Baltimore Orioles per Francis Romero, and the Phillies made it official in their roster move announcement. Leon hit .299, .372, .514 with 24 homers and 29 stolen bases in AAA in 2024. He is just 27 years old, but he missed a good amount of time last season with some knee issues. So, hey, maybe the Phillies are taking a chance on some depth here. I will never hate the move of trying to claim anybody off of waivers and seeing what they got. There's nothing wrong with picking anybody up off of waivers. But once again, the real reason why we are here, agreed to terms on a contract with Rafael Marchand and Garrett Stubbs. That backup catcher battle. Obviously, Marchand won it last year, did a pretty good job as the backup catcher. I wouldn't say he was a great backup catcher. I wouldn't say he was a bad backup catcher. He did a fine job for what you need from a backup catcher. Ideally, you see a little more out of Marchand, meaning you can get JT Realmuto, if he returns, off of his feet a little more in the coming years. Alec Boehm, Edmundo Sosa, Bryson Stott, the three infielders that were tendered contracts, Brandon Marsh, the lone outfielder that is arbitration eligible. And then as far as pitchers, Joan Duran, obviously the Phillies still have control of Duran, the big closer that they traded for last August. And then lefty reliever Tanner Banks, who had an unbelievable past season, gave the Phillies way more than I think they expected. And Jesus Luzardo, one of Dave Dombrowski's best moves of his entire tenure that happened last offseason. And once again, Michael Mercado and Junior Marte were non-tendered, meaning they are now free agents and not members of the Phillies anymore. The Phillies' 40-man roster sits at 32 players now out of 40. The deadline for players and teams to agree on a contract, so basically those 7 guys that I listed, is January 9th. So obviously they have a little time, about a month and a half-ish, for them to figure it out. But that is the big news of today. Once again, if you guys want me to make a little bit of an arbitration video, if you guys want me to make a video just breaking down arbitration, I think that would be a pretty helpful video. So if you guys are interested, let me know down in the comments. But the big story of this whole offseason, and I think Boehm is sort of in the mix here, do you think it's time to trade Alec Boehm? Do you want Alec Boehm at third base in 2026? I want to know your thoughts down in the comments. Hope everybody enjoys the weekend. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.